It was a time of certainty, a time of optimism, and for many, a time when life felt predictable and safe. This was America in the 1950s, a world painted in pastel cars, checkerboard kitchens, and black and white morals, now seen in living color. The war was over, soldiers had come home, and a whole generation was ready to settle down, raise families, and build something new. Rows of nearly identical houses sprang up across the country, neatly trimmed lawns, white picket fences, and two-bedroom dreams bought with GI bills. You'd see a clothesline in every backyard, bikes parked in the driveway, a baseball glove left on the porch after a neighborhood game. In places like Levittown, New York, or Lakewood, California, suburbia was more than a location. It was a symbol of stability, of structure, and a life of certainty. If you want to understand the mood of the 50s, just look at the cars. Big, bold, beautiful. Chevy Bel Airs, Ford Fairlanes, and Buick Roadmasters rolled down Main Street. Two-tone paint jobs, sweeping fins, and shiny chrome bumpers reflecting the morning sun. It wasn't just transportation, it was style, it was freedom. On weekends, families would take Sunday drives with no destination, just for the pleasure of it. And at night, you could find teens packed into convertibles, parked at the drive-in, sharing milkshakes and secrets beneath the flicker of a movie screen. Malls hadn't taken over yet. Amazon didn't exist. So if you needed shoes, a dress, or a bottle of shampoo, you went downtown. Streets were lined with mom-and-pop shops. Neon signs buzzed over Woolworths, JCPenney, and local diners with 5-cent coffee. Storefronts were polished. Window displays changed with the seasons. And inside, a clerk greeted you by name. Not because they had to, but because they knew you. Shopping was personal, and going to town was a weekly tradition. Inside the home, the 1950s was the golden age of domestic life. Kitchens were decorated in pastel blues, soft yellows, and cherry reds. GE and Westinghouse appliances gleamed beneath linoleum floors and patterned wallpaper. Moms wore aprons. Dads read the evening paper. Kids watched Howdy Doody or the Mickey Mouse Club on small, glowing TV sets. Families sat together at the table every night. No screens, no distractions, just conversation, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and maybe a Jell-O salad. And when dinner was done, the dishes were washed by hand, with the radio humming in the background. Entertainment in the 50s didn't come from screens in your pocket. It came from the living room, the radio, or the neighborhood. TV was still young. Black and white, small screen, big antenna. And when a show came on, you watched it when it aired, because there was no other way. On Saturday mornings, kids gathered around the screen with cereal bowls in hand, watching cartoons that made the whole house laugh. And at night, families tuned in to I Love Lucy, Dragnet, or Gunsmoke, stories that brought people together, even in their silence. If it wasn't TV, it was the radio, or records played on a wooden console the size of a dresser. Elvis, Patti Page, Frank Sinatra. Music that you could feel in your bones and hear in every diner jukebox. School life in the 1950s? It had its own rhythm. Boys wore collared shirts. Girls wore dresses, saddle shoes, and pigtails. Teachers were respected, strict, and often feared, just enough to keep everyone in line. Chalk dust filled the air. Desks had inkwells. And when the bell rang, the sound meant play, freedom, and fun. Kids walked to school, carried metal lunchboxes with cartoon heroes on them, and drank milk out of tiny glass bottles with paper straws. Dining out was a treat, not a routine. Most meals were home-cooked. Roasts, casseroles, stews. Mom's recipe box held the secrets to every birthday, every Sunday, every holiday. On Friday nights, maybe you went to the local diner, sat in a red vinyl booth, ordered a burger, fries, and a malted for 35 cents. And if you were lucky, the waitress knew your name and your order before you even sat down. That was America in the 50s. Slow, personal, full of flavor and heart. Most dads worked 9-to-5 jobs, factories, offices, or out on the road. Suits, briefcases, packed lunches. Men were expected to provide, protect, and keep their shoes polished. There was pride in honest work, and a handshake still meant something. Moms? They ran the home like clockwork, cleaning, cooking, sewing, budgeting. Their work wasn't always recognized, but it was the backbone of every household. The world didn't come to you. You went out into it. News came once a day, folded in half, tossed onto the porch. You read it over coffee, then discussed it with your neighbor over the fence. You knew your neighbors. You borrowed sugar. You helped mow their lawn when they were sick, and they showed up at your front door with a casserole when you had a baby. It was a time of community, where people depended on each other, and actually liked it that way. Life in the 1950s wasn't perfect. There were limits, inequalities, things we've since outgrown, and for good reason. But in the day-to-day rhythm of home life, there was something beautiful, something grounded. The days were slower, the noise was lower, and the moments, whether in a kitchen, a classroom, or a car on a Sunday drive, felt more real. Today, we live faster, but sometimes, in all that speed, we forget the simple joy of being present. So if you ever find yourself flipping through old photo albums or watching those faded color home movies and wondering what made the 1950s feel so special, maybe it wasn't the gadgets, or the cars, or even the music. Maybe it was the people, the way we knew them, the way we talked face to face, and the way we held on to each other, even when the world was changing. Thanks for joining us on this trip back in time. This is Retro and Beyond, and some moments are just too beautiful to forget.